Chapter 24, Human Population, Limited Resources, and Pollution. In this chapter, we're going to cover population changes, patterns of population growth, environmental factors in population size, the Earth's carrying capacity, human impacts on carrying capacity, global climate change, and looking into the future. Starting with population changes. Population dynamics it describes how populations change in size. Population size is going to be controlled by two factors. Birth rate is going to increase the population size. Birth rate is the number of births per specified number of individuals in the population during a specific time. So for example, something like 18 births per 1,000 individuals per year. Another thing that's going to contribute greatly to the birth rate is going to be the age at which the female has her first offspring. Earlier on in life is going to increase the birth rate. So if females start having offspring, let's say at 2 years for monkeys, whereas there's maybe another tribe of monkeys where they're having them at 5 years old, what we're going to see is that the population of the monkeys that have birth starting at 2 years old is going to be much higher, growing much faster, because every 2 years, there's a new generation of females ready to give birth, as opposed to every 5 years. So the age at which a female has her first offspring has a dramatic impact at the rate at which a population goes. This is actually going to be the most important factor in determining a female's reproductive potential, is the age at which they start having offspring. We're also going to see that this is hugely important when we're talking about population growth for a given area. So we're going to look a little bit at the growth rate of the world's population. Right now, the growth rate is at about 1% per year. The death rate is going to be the number of deaths per specified number of individuals in the population during a specific time. So, for example, if we had 18 births every year for 1,000 individuals, and we had 8 deaths per year for 1,000 individuals, then we have our growth rate is going to be determined by taking the number of births minus our number of deaths divided by 1,000. So 18 minus 8 divided by 1,000 is going to be roughly 1% per year. As we mentioned, some factors that control that or contribute to that growth rate is going to be the age females begin having children. The younger the females are, the more potential children, the greater the population growth. Death rate. Death rate in the most recent years has gone down. So death rate is decreasing every year for humans. Why is that? There are a lot of reasons that death rate has gone down. Just to name a few, we've got medical advances. We're going to watch a video on the amazingness of antibiotics and how things as simple as a small cut could have been a death sentence 200-300 years ago. But now, thanks to the invention of antibiotics, it doesn't have to be. We can treat minor infections. We can treat major infections. With better sanitation and nutrition, we can prevent infections from happening in the first place. We can keep our bodies healthy so we don't die of very basic diseases. We don't have to deal with scurvy. Scurvy is not a problem anymore because not only do we know more about nutrition, we know more about the importance of having vitamins and minerals, we know more about the importance of having a varied diet, but also, if need be, we can take vitamin supplements because we're aware of what our body needs. So there are a lot of things that kind of affect that population change. One thing that also contributes to that population growth rate would be doubling time. Doubling time is the number of years it takes for a population to double at a specific growth rate. This is calculated by dividing growth rate by 70, which is just a demographic constant. Less developed countries have a smaller doubling time compared to more developed countries. I'm not going to ask you to do any math for this chapter, but I do want you to understand some of our big picture concepts and how the world's growth population is affected by two things: birth rate and death rate. Even if we see birth rate go down, if we see birth rate go down, but we also see death rate go down, we're still going to see the world's population increase if death rate is decreasing at a lower rate than the birth rate. All right, and here's just going to be a short summary video going over those population changes.
The dynamics of a population, and ultimately its size, are a function of the relationship among the numbers of births, immigrants, deaths, and emigrants. Population growth occurs when the number of births and immigrants is greater than the number of deaths and emigrants. The change in population size is calculated by subtracting the number of deaths and emigrants from the number of births and immigrants. In considering the growth of the world's human population, immigration and emigration are not relevant. The growth rate is typically expressed as the number of births minus deaths per 1,000 persons in the population. In 2006, the estimated birth rate of the world's population was 20 births per 1,000 individuals per year, and the death rate was 9 deaths per 1,000 individuals per year. Thus, the growth rate of the world's population was an increase of 11 individuals per 1,000, which is equal to 1.1%. When we want to predict future growth, a population's age structure, the relative number of individuals of each age, can be helpful. The ages are often grouped into pre-reproductive, reproductive, and post-reproductive categories. Generally, only individuals of reproductive age add to the size of the population. However, the pre-reproductive group, those who are currently too young to reproduce, usually get older, and when they enter the reproductive class, they have children, adding additional members to the population. The relative size of the base of a population's age structure determines how quickly numbers will be added to the population in the future. A wide base to any age structure reflects a growing population, as exists in India, which faces a future with strong demands on the country's commodities. Moderately stable nations, such as the United States, show a more consistent age distribution, with some fluctuation, but with a small pre-reproductive population. The pre-reproductive base of the age structure of Canada is smaller than the reproductive base. Canada's population will probably decline in the future. The age at which females have their first offspring has a dramatic impact on the birth rate of a population. The younger the women are when they begin to reproduce, the faster the population grows. One reason is that a woman who begins reproduction at a younger age has the time to have more children than a woman who delays childbearing. However, family size isn't the only factor. Even if two women ultimately have the same number of children, with the only difference being the age at which they have them, the one who delays childbirth will have less of an impact on population growth. If the late-born children continue to trend with their own reproductive lives, the population as a whole grows slower.